offering a workshop for administrators. Tomorrow, you will get to go to one of the other workshops. Rather than us repeat this tomorrow, this is a good group we need to talk to. The role of the administrator was absolutely key. It was huge. And so we thought that it would be important for some of the administrators who were on the project to share some of their learning and what it is that they learned in terms of this project. The fact that they're here already is important. And the fact that they actually, some of them presented at the OAME conference. They were at the Summer Institute. They were with their teachers. And it was really important. It really made a huge difference. So I just want to share a little bit of sort of a research piece in terms of what we know about effective leadership. We know that number one is the teacher in terms of student achievement. But we also know number two is the administrator and the instructional leadership. They are absolutely key. That they have a direct impact on student achievement. And I know sometimes when you're a secondary principal, it sometimes is a bit of a tug of war in terms of who the instructional leader is, and there's no doubt about it. But don't give up. You are the instructional leader within the school, and I think it's really important to show that teachers are supported. The fact that you are here and you're not out there on your Blackberry, but you're engaging in the same kinds of things that your teachers are doing is really important. It shows them that the work that they do is valued and is important. Sometimes we find that when teachers get together, sometimes the talk shifts to the technicalities of things. How do you do attendance? How do you get the laptops? How do you work this? And sometimes we need that knowledgeable other in there, which could be you, or it could be a resource you bring, or it could be a perspective that you bring, to sometimes shift that conversation to the bigger ideas. I know I was just reading through some of the reports my RAs had handed in, and there was one who talked about that the talk in the room was very different when the vice principal was in the room than when the vice principal wasn't. Not that it wasn't still valuable talk, but it was just different. It tended to raise to us what's our goal, what's our purpose, when we have that administrator in the room. So it's important that we move from not just the craft wisdom, but to stretching that out. These researchers, Luke Scoresby and Matsumoto, have done tons of research in terms of effective professional learning for math and science teachers. And basically, in all of their work, they boil it down to it needs to be curriculum-based, which doesn't just mean we're looking at the curriculum document. It means that we're talking about mathematics and what does math teaching and learning look like and what are these math concepts. So that's a key piece. It needs to focus on student thinking. That actually takes away the worry about it's focused on their teaching. So if people are in observing classes, it's not about what you did as a teacher, it's about paying attention to the student's understanding and how can I shift my practice so the students have a deeper understanding. It also is collaborative and it's supportive within supportive school and district environments. And that notion of collaboration and that notion of, I can take a risk, that's huge. They need to feel supported. You know what? A school culture is not all that different from a classroom culture. It's differentiated, isn't it? Everybody is at a different place as a teacher in terms of their own learning and their own acceptance and their own perspective. So they need to feel like they're in a place where they can take risks, and if it doesn't work out, you'll still be supportive. And so that's key. The same kinds of things we want teachers to do in a classroom are the same kinds of things that principals should be doing. And it should align with other elements in the system. I feel like we're well positioned within Ontario because a lot of the work that we do is connected with the research. So if a teacher reads Growing Success or reads a curriculum document, they're getting similar messages than if they read a research article or an article in a practitioner journal, or if they go to a PD session. I feel as though we're fairly coherent. And one would think, well, why not? But I've been in other places where they're getting very mixed messages from policymakers, from researchers, from their administration. But here I feel as though it's fairly coherent in terms of the messages that we're getting. So I feel like the last one we're not doing too badly on. So I'll just highlight a couple of activities and I'm turning it over because you want to hear from principals who've been through this. So lesson study is a good way to go about, or co-teaching, co-planning is a good way for people to engage in some of those ideas. So that might be, we had some grade 7, 8, 9 teachers work together to design a lesson, and they tried it out in different classrooms. But it pulls in that collaborative work, it pulls in the focus on curriculum, because it is about what does this lesson look like, what is the math, and it also focuses on student thinking, because when people are visiting the lesson study, they're focusing on that student thinking. Another one that we saw is working together to examine student work. So a lesson study might be a bit daunting. So let's all try out this task, and let's bring in the student work, and let's talk about it, and let's look at the different ways that we solve this problem. Or some schools use videos. So let's look at a video recording of the students thinking, which might have been on an explain everything, on an iPad with explain everything, or show me, and let's examine the student thinking. So it didn't have to be just written word. And that pulls in, again, bottom work, focus on student thinking and focus on curriculum. And I'll just offer a third one, which is book study. Book study, sometimes you could even do a pamphlet study. So you know some of those ministry documents, like paying attention to algebraic reasoning, or some of those sorts of things. If a book sounds like too much to use as a book study, then use a monograph or one of those small things so that people engage. Because generally a book study helps you bring in the knowledgeable other. It often has a problem within it that they might want to try out in the classroom. And then you're all dealing with some common sorts of ideas. And in fact, tomorrow, every school is getting one of the books that we found to be quite useful, and that's called The 5 Practices, and we'll have a presentation on the 5 practices, because we found that that bubbled up for many of the groups as something that was very useful for them to use. So, I suspect you all know this. Engage with teachers during your professional learning. And I know that you're in and out all the time. So when we visited the school teams and they were meeting together, yes, an administrator would be there, but they would often be in and out based on emergencies that happened, but they always came back. You also find ways to provide space and time and resources for people to meet and to do things. Think about ways to help to facilitate the scheduling. So in other words, whether it's a matter of everybody who's teaching grade 9 and 5 has a similar prep period. Because at the end of tomorrow, we don't have a pot of gold to say that we can give you supply teaching, supply resources, money for supply teachers for 1 day a month. So we have to be creative. Really, this idea of recognizing that every teacher is in a different place. I know you probably have naysayers who aren't too sure about this, or think that this new way of teaching math, which I don't think is new, we've been doing this for a long time, curriculum is 11 years old, not too new, is going to go away, but it isn't. It's been an evolution, not a revolution. We've been talking about this for a long time. But recognizing that they might not be the first place to start. I think on those that really you see some movement. And allowing teachers to choose what they want to work on is really helpful. It's still all around the same idea, but maybe somebody wants to work on their questioning. Maybe somebody else wants to work on rich tasks. Maybe somebody, it all comes together. You all end up in this simpler kinds of places, but it gives them some choice about what they want to do. One teacher happened, we have many quotes, and all of our administrators are wonderful. I just happened to pull this one out. This one teacher said, this administrator is all about supporting us and allowing us to take chances and take risks. And it's huge. And more of us are willing, knowing that we're not going to get burned. So it's that whole idea of supportive environment for people to be able to work within and feel as though if it doesn't work out, they still have your support. Because things don't always work out the first time, especially when it's a whole new practice. Kids are used to being in groups. I put them in groups. Oh, look, it doesn't work. Told you so. Well, it takes a while to build that culture, doesn't it? Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to the principal